So I've come up with the best way for this waste heat recovery project to work, and this is to use the existing heating system rather than installing some sort of heater matrix thing under the back seat. So what can be done is extra hoses, their space can be routed in this space down here next to where the existing coolant hoses are. In there's a big coolant hose in there. You could route two hoses next to that into here, and then you would need a plate heat exchanger. So you'd have the hot water from the cooling circuit of the range extender engine coming through to the front here and then flowing through a plate heat exchanger. And the reason for that is if you didn't have the plate heat exchanger and just put the range extender cooling circuit just straight onto this, if you wanted to precondition the car just while it was on charge or whatever, the heater in here would then have to heat the whole range extender engine block, because you'd have this pump here pumping the coolant just through the range extender engine. But if you put the plate heat exchanger in between these two circuits, when the range extender engine is off, the coolant does not move through its cooling circuit because the water pump in the range extender is actually driven off the engine crankshaft. So that's why a plate heat exchanger would be needed in the front, with the range extender's cooling circuit on one side of the heat exchanger and this on the other. So I don't actually know how I'm going to go about this at all, but the connection that you would need to actually break to get those two hoses to the front of the car is actually underneath this plate heat exchanger here. So that's a connection there. There's a hose which runs here and through to there, and I'd somehow have to get two lengths of hose in between that which go to the front of the car, but unfortunately I can't see any way of doing that at the moment without removing the engine, which I'm just not going to be doing. If I take those screws out and lift up this plate heat exchanger to try and get into it, that's probably not going to work because the hoses are already very short and they're all of a specific length and all bent to shape, so it probably would hardly move. So I don't actually know if I'm going to go ahead with the project or not at the moment. That's what needs to be done. If you see, there's a connection on the top and there's just another one underneath that, another connection going into the heat exchanger. You'd actually have to pop the hose off that and then put a connection in, run that to the front, and then the connection that's on the heat exchanger, you put another hose onto there, and those two hoses would run to the front, and that would go into the plate heat exchanger which you'd install in the front of the car. But as I said, I can't really see any effective way of actually getting into there to do that.